Hey, what's going on, Sully?
Hey, what's poppin', Wayne? How we living, bro?
Not too bad. Hey, I saw that Boston College has come out and said that they will not accept a bowl invite if they get one. And I'm like, dude, you're 5-4. It's kind of like me saying, hey, if Margot Robbie asks me out, I'm not saying yes.
Exactly. This is wild. And it's what's even crazier is they get money for these events and the promotion and obviously the recruiting aspect. And I mean, this only hurts the program. I don't understand it at all, but hey, it's Boston College. You know what I mean?
We have a huge interview for you. I hope you guys are tuning in right now because of the promotion that we put out there about our guests. It's going to be really exciting. I'm going to jump right into our video, get through our introduction, and then we're going to have Anthony Duckett come on to talk some Houston sports with us.
Yo, buddy.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.
Jordan. Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan. Drives one out to deep left field. This one's got a chance to get out of here. Gone! 3-run Jimmy Jack first. Big league home run for Mike Trout.
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler.
And an 81-point game. 55 in the second half. Ladies and gentlemen, you have witnessed the second greatest scoring performance in NBA history.
What's going on, Sully? Another episode of Infinity Sports. Welcome, everybody. Big show today. We've got a huge interview, and then we're going to talk some Sully's top prospects. What do you think about that?
You know it's going to be a good one, too. We got some quarterbacks in this list, finally.
Now, obviously, if you are watching us, you are probably watching us on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, or Twitter. If you miss any part of the show, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, as well as find a replay of the video show on YouTube the following day. I do encourage you to do that because there are a lot of graphics and videos that we do play that you would miss out on just listening to the show. We are also on social media at Infinity Sports Podcast on Facebook, at Infinity Sports Podcast on Instagram, and at Sports Infinity 5 on Twitter. If you don't want to remember any of those things, just remember infinitysportspodcast.com. Links to every one of those social media sites is there, as well as links to the streams on YouTube. As I mentioned, we have a huge interview today. It is brought to you by Invader Coffee. Invader Coffee is a great sponsor of the show. Definitely go to the site, enter the code BELLYUP, 15% off your entire order. It's 100% organic coffee. It's air roasted. You get 100% money back guarantee if you're not satisfied with it, and it's veteran owned. So you're supporting the troops, supporting people who, stand for our freedom. Sully, you enjoyed your coffee?
I did. It was very good. I'm going to have to re-up another order, man.
Now, I'm really excited to bring on our guest. He is a very, very talented writer for Space City Scoop, as well as Clutch City Control Room. He used to write for the Toro Times. Everything I've read that he's written has been just phenomenal, and so I'm really excited to have him on to talk Houston sports, and that is Anthony Duckett. So, Anthony, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, not a problem.
Yeah, we're really excited. I mean, when somebody's in a community like that and entrenched into the sports community like that, I mean, it doesn't get any better. So we're really excited to have you on.
Likewise. You all were talking about that coffee. That coffee sounds pretty good, huh? Invader Coffee?
It's good, man. I'm telling you, I'm not even a big coffee guy, and I'm telling you it's good, man. It's smooth. I like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try it out sometime because I'm a big coffee guy myself.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's veteran owned. We got in touch with them, and they're like, hey, can you you get it out there? We'll give a 15% discount if people enter the code. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people actually started visiting the site initially for all their apparel because it's veteran owned. There's a lot of Grim Reaper type stuff. So during Halloween, They do pretty well.
Okay. I got to check it out.
So we wanted to obviously talk about a bunch of Houston sports topics. But before we do, I'm curious if you wanted to talk a little bit about, how did you really get into, going from being a fan to writing about this stuff?
Oh, that's actually a good question. So, I've always wanted to write for the Rockets because I feel like I cover the team. I know a lot about, it seems like every transaction that happens, or report or news. So about a year and a half ago, I was, just trying to figure out how I can get into the blogging thing. So, as simple as I just typed in, Houston Rockets blog sites, and I happened to notice a couple sites, and I pretty much applied for all of them. There's like 4 or 5 of them. And the first one I heard back from was basically Scoop, which is a fan-sided network Rockets site. And I figured, I've read a few of the I had read a few of those sites, those articles. Effective, and I felt like, that's something that I would, really want to do, because you're speaking as a voice of how the fan base might feel, or how you as a fan might feel about certain news reports, things like that. And what was cool about the fan-sided network is I was able to also write for the Texans at the same time, Toro Times, simultaneously. So that was kind of a cool thing, And eventually I kind of shifted more towards the Rockets, although I still love my beloved Texans, although this is kind of an embarrassing year for us. But at least we got Trader Bill out of there. So
exactly, you got rid of Bill O'Brien, so that's a start, man. That's a start.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you do your articles, because here's the thing, I got started in this doing articles as well, blogging on different sites, and I like to write a lot of human interest type stories. So I wrote about Ronnie Fields from Chicago, who played with Kevin Garnett at Farragut Academy. I wrote an article about Brian Taylor, the former Yankees number 1 overall pick. And it's funny because Sully and our former co-host, they were like, who are these people that you're writing about? So I feel like that's the really interesting stuff, is the stuff people don't know.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I really enjoy writing about, prospects, or whether it's like a second round, unheralded draft pick, or maybe an undrafted rookie who's happened to be flashing some signs in camp or summer league, whatever. I tend to enjoy that just because, you're able to find out yourself more about a guy that you may have not known about, and plus it's always cool to know, who the team has in the pipeline, or it's always cool to know players that are maybe on the practice squad that might not even make the team. You can kind of figure out their backstory and kind of get an emotional attachment towards that, that player, things like that.
Yeah, that's Wayne and N'Keal Harry in the NFL.
Yeah.
I still believe he's going to turn out to be something.
Yeah, I'm big into prospects in the NFL, the football side of it, and I love it for essentially the same reasons. You kind of develop a connection with these kids, and you see like how they grew up. You learn their backstories and kind of where they came from, why they, essentially play the way they do if they have like a mean streak or something like that. And it's really, very interesting. So I love that side of it.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt.
Yeah. Now with the Houston Rockets, obviously there's a lot going on right now, but I like to do things in chronological order.
Always.
And, obviously going back to Mike D'Antoni says, I'm kind of a mutual breakup is what it was reported, that they just, neither side really wanted it to continue. He leaves and the Rockets start their coaching search. Now I'm a big guy. When they started their search, I really like Shaka Smart from Texas. Yeah. I thought he would have been a fantastic coach, because I like those college guys like Brad Stevens, who can come in and Shaka's a really, really smart X's and O's guy. I don't think he's a great recruiter, which is why he hasn't done well there. But I think as far as being a head coach, I think he would have been great in Houston. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Shaka, as you mentioned, Shaka he hasn't done as well at Texas as he had done, prior to landing there. But what we had gathered is that they wanted someone who had been around the NBA for a long time. If you look at all of the guys that they had, pretty much all the finalists, at least, Jeff Van Gundy, obviously been around since the 90s. John Lucas. He had been around, since, longer than that, and Stephen Silas, although it was a first-time coach, he's been coaching for 20 years as an assistant. So what I gathered was that they wanted somebody who had, a lot of NBA experience, whether as a head coach, preferably, or, just being around the league for a while. Because, what was crazy about the head coaching search is that I think that was kind of signs of the franchise really being kind of split, kind of torn. Because, reports are that the owner, Tillman Fertitta, wanted Jeff Van Gundy, but Harden wanted Lucas, right? Daryl Morey wanted Doc Rivers. And we obviously see, he left and went to Philly and joined Doc Rivers, So, that was really kind of the early signs of, at the time I thought it was really weird that one day we'll get a report that Lucas is the front runner. And the next day we reported that Van Gundy's a front runner. So it was like I kind of gathered that nobody really knew what was going on. And it makes sense because the organization was torn on what was going to be the next move.
I'm curious your take on this. This is more of a general NBA, but because we're talking coaching searches, why can't Mark Jackson get a head coaching job?
I don't know. That's a good question. I thought that Mark Jackson laid his blueprint out in Golden State. Obviously, Kerr got there and made some different changes, mainly having the offense flow through Draymond. But, I don't know. It seemed like there were some political things or there was something going on behind the scenes when he was in Golden State that maybe we just don't know about, don't know much about, because I would have thought that at least, he would get – every year there's these openings that come open or come up, rather, and I never see him as a finalist or even –
All right.
So I got a question for you.
What's that?
Now, obviously, the big trade happened, and Russell Westbrook is moved, and you get John Wall in, who, in my opinion, is a lesser Russell Westbrook to an extent.
Yeah.
What do you think was the Rockets' kind of motive behind this? Was this really the only deal they could get? Like, why replace a guy who really kind of couldn't shoot, deep and was a slasher and an attacker with another guy who can't shoot deep and is a slasher and an attacker?
So that's a good point. Obviously, the two, they definitely have a similar style of play, although Wall's a little bit of a better – well, he is a better defender, and he's a better three-point shooter. But they definitely have similar styles of play where they're both very athletic, and comes to driving to the basket, speed, athleticism, quickness, But I think, what I gathered is that Russ really wanted out. And I think the thinking that the Rockets had is that John Wall is a better fit alongside Harden than Russ was, right? Russ had a 34.2% usage rate, which is quite high. That was like top. Yeah, that was like top 10 in the league. Mm-hmm. Again, obviously Harden has to have the ball in his hands. That's kind of his style of play. That's kind of been the play style that has worked best for him. So the thinking is that Wall won't necessarily need to dominate the ball as much as Russ, and along with the fact that Russ wanted out. Now there's, obviously we've heard that Harden preferred playing alongside Wall, but then he doesn't show up to camp at all. So you would think if he was excited about John Wall that he would at least been here, and he hasn't been. So, but John Wall said that they talked, before the trade happened, when the trade happened, and he's been adamant that Harden wants to play with him. So we'll see. But I think the thinking is that Russ wanted out, and that Wall might be a better, more of a natural fit alongside Harden.
Yeah, see, my concern with the trade initially was that, I felt like they brought Chris Paul in to play alongside Harden. And again, Chris Paul is a ball-dominant player, and so is James Harden. Then they switch out Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook, who is another ball-dominant player. And now they go get John Wall, who's another ball-dominant player. I don't know if they can't see the dynamics not work. You can't have two guys dribbling the basketball at the same time. So if I were them, either they're thinking that James Harden should stop handling the ball and play more off the ball, and they're trying to help him do that, or they're just grossly misconstruing the situation there.
Well, so there's that take. There's also the take that many people think that the Rockets were and are planning for an individual James Harden split, right? So if that's the case, and you figure if he's going to be gone anyways, the hard part about really it all ties back to the Chris Paul contract. He was making $40 million a year. Obviously, in the NBA, salary cap league, you trading a salary, you got to bring in someone or a group of players making that amount. And, the Rockets owner, Tillman Fertitta, they're big on, having stars. They want fans in the stands. Obviously, right now it's a little different, of course, but, they want stars. So, the rush trade was because James Harden, reports are that Harden wanted to play alongside, his childhood best friend, and that Fertitta, the owner, thought that Chris Paul's contract was the worst that he had ever seen in business or sports or whatever. That's what the reports say. So if that's the case, then that move was made. Harden wanted it, Fertitta wanted it. So Morey, was like, okay, let's do it. Now, the asking price for Russ was crazy. A monsoon of draft picks, pick swaps. that was kind of over the top in my opinion, but that was the classic Daryl Morey. He said it before. He doesn't care about draft picks. He's all about going all in now. He feels like, if you're a contender now, then you go all in. So in that case, he made that move. But a lot of people think that was not a move that Daryl wanted to make, but that Harden and Tillman both said, hey, let's get this done. So, what I think is kind of weird is that I think Russ played very well this past season. Especially for a system that was not, suited to his strengths. Obviously, the Rockets, like at least in the past with D'Antoni, like the chuck threes, it's not Russ's game. So then you have to, change your game plan up mid-season. You go full out small ball to help create more spacing. And then Russ goes on a tear. He had his best calendar 2020. He had like 25 games of 20 plus points or more. Then he gets COVID, and then he gets hurt. And unfortunately, in the playoffs, he did not even, he wasn't even half the player that he was during the season, which is why I think it's kind of weird that all of a sudden afterwards they're like, nah, we're going to blow this up. Harden's like, I want out. Russ is like, I want out. It didn't make sense because, my opinion is that most of the time with star players, especially a system like the Rockets run, year two, you figure will be more, better than year one. Now you guys are used to playing alongside each other. You kind of know your role in the system with this personnel. But once D'Antoni was gone, Daryl's gone, I think that it's odd to me that the uncertainty of the franchise may have made – reports are that they may have made them both, feel uneasy about, the Rockets' title contending status. The reason why it's weird is because Russ and Harden were involved in the decision-making of the head coach. Silas said that they were involved in the interview. Like they asked him questions. He had to sell them on the fit. So it's weird that now we're hearing that, Harden really didn't want Silas. It's kind of strange, but we'll see. I mean, nobody knows what Harden is thinking right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think the next question I was going to have was, now do you think they made the John Wall move thinking that they were going to now move James Harden for more pieces? I know, he said he wants to go to the Nets, the Bucks, and now the Sixers are the three teams he's willing to go to.
And Miami.
And the Heat. Now, I think the issue being is, like you said, Houston wants stars, and to move Harden, you're going to need stars back, but I don't know if any of those teams would be willing to move their stars. I think a Nets deal could work because you could get a Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie, Jared Allen kind of package, and they could still keep their big three. But I don't know. I don't really see a move happening. Do you see a move happening? Do you think one's like ever reasonable or actually a chance, or is this all just, smoke?
So my personal opinion, personal thoughts is that I don't think that a Brooklyn Nets deal would take place. We've heard that the Rockets have told, the Nets, hey, if you want Harden, give us, Durant or Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, that's what I assume they're going to ask for from everybody. If they ask for the Sixers, they're going to want Simmons or, somebody else. I just don't see deals working. Yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely don't think the Brooklyn Nets thing will happen. Milwaukee would be intriguing if you could get back Jrue Holiday and Middleton. Probably can't get that. If you couldn't get that, they can't trade Jrue Holiday at least until the trade deadline because they just got him. Yeah. But I'm not sure that Milwaukee would do that deal. Miami, a lot of Rockets fans have basically had this drawn down to either Tyler Hero for Miami, and of course, you have to have salaries to match draft picks, all that, or Ben Simmons from Philly, and of course, again, draft picks, and maybe a Matthias Thybulle, a young emerging player. Personally, I think that Simmons would be a good fit if you have to trade Harden. I think Simmons is the best deal, although we've heard that, Philadelphia doesn't want to trade Simmons or Joel Embiid, which again, around the time the trades taking place, negotiations take place, you don't benefit from leaking that you're willing to trade your star. You're not going to say, yeah, we're willing to give him up. You have to, play hardball. Well, I wouldn't want to do that. Well, he's off limits, and make it, obviously the first person that caves or says, yeah, we're willing to give you this, loses, because like, okay, cool, we'll take that and more since you're willing to trade us that. I think personally the Rockets really have a legitimate argument to make to Harden that, hey, just play with this team. This is a new team. The way it played last night against Chicago, it's a preseason game, and it's against Chicago, of course. Just a few disclaimers there, But Boogie Cousins looked good. Obviously, the question is, can he stay healthy? John Wall looked really good. The question was about his health.
Can he stay healthy? Yeah,
yeah, exactly. The question was about his health as well. He's been out for 2 years. But I think if you can, it is a big if, but if you can get a healthy Wall and Cousins, the Rockets also signed Christian Wood, a rising big man. Silas, the head coach, he was the Mavericks had the best offense in NBA history last year with him running the offense. So I think the thinking that the Rockets have is that, hey, if you can just get Harden to camp, get him to at least see this team, join this team, then you could maybe change his mind. But again, no one really knows what exactly he's thinking. If the thinking is that he wants to get a title, personally, I don't really know if going to Philly in exchange for Simmons does that, and the next deal is not going to happen. So, in my opinion, if you're Harden, do you have the best chance of winning a title here, or is the thinking that the Lakers are so loaded, that no one's really going to beat them anyways? So, is the thinking that I might as well stay here where I'm loved, obviously, and give this, franchise a chance? I think that the Rockets will be willing to at least hear Harden out if he gave it a chance with this roster. There's a brand new team, new coach, new general manager. Why not at least give it a shot, or at least pretend to look like you're willing to see how this goes? And if it doesn't work out by the trade deadline, maybe approach them again at that point and say, hey, guys, it's not working. I still want out. Personally, I think that would be the way to go. The Rockets don't have to trade him. He's under contract for 2 more years. Now in the NBA it's different than NFL, right? NBA is players' league. Players could say, I'm not going to play, or going to hold out. Salary's fully guaranteed. Harden is not a guy who needs any. He's hungry for money, right? We just saw him, making it rain in a restaurant. A few days ago, he's handing out wads of cash to little baby. So, we'll see what happens. But my thinking is that, if I'm Harden, the best bet at least would be to start the season out with this team and give it a go.
Well, Sully alluded to it, and I read your article, which actually got the hair to stand up on my arm when I saw the title was, do the Rockets owe James Harden a trade to Brooklyn? And I got so mad. I'm like, no, they don't. And I'm glad that you agreed at the end of the article. You're like, no, they don't owe him anything. But that kind of goes to where this is going, where he's like, hey, I'll play for Miami. I'll play for Philly. Like, you don't have a no trade clause, dude. We'll send you wherever we want.
Yeah, exactly. The Rockets have total control of the situation right now. He's under contract for 2 more years. And, I get it in this era of player empowerment in the NBA, right? Star players do, go wherever they want. LeBron goes to the Lakers, or KD went to the Warriors, now Brooklyn. But if you want to do that, there's a way to do that. Just sign, 1+1 player option contracts, right? That's what LeBron kept doing, Durant kept doing. And when you have the flexibility to say, okay, at the end of this season, I want to weigh my options out. Okay, maybe I'll sign 1 more year. Okay, next year, weigh my options out. You don't sign a supermax deal, and then you have 2 years left on his contract. He actually has 3 years left, but he has an option after next season, a $47 million, which, I don't know that Harden would turn down a $47 million player option. Tear that contract up. I don't know that would be smart, at least. Yeah. So, but he's got 2 years left before he can actually say, okay, I'm opting out. I'm going to explore my player option. So you don't have to do what he wants, especially in this case where he's kind of giving the finger to the organization. Like I said, to me, if you're looking for a way out, and so this is kind of an odd comparison, but I kind of look at it like if you work for an employer and you don't have any PTO and it's holiday time and you're like, hey, I want to take some time off with my family, go on a vacation. You don't have the PTO, and your boss says, nah, we can't make that happen. You don't have the PTO. You wouldn't just say, I'm not going to come to work, then F it. Because if you did, you would be out of a job. Now, obviously, the NBA is different, right? It's much different. But it just seems like the way to go about it, if you're trying to get the organization to do you a solid, is to play nice. Go to camp, be the consummate professional. You're still getting paid. At least put on a front, if nothing else, that you're willing to try it out. I think that would go a lot further. But my opinion in that article is that, I wrote that because a lot of fans love Harden, right? Since he's been here, Harden's been great, and I understand that because before Harden, the Rockets were, mediocre, fringe lottery team. They weren't bad enough to be a lottery team, but they weren't going to be a playoff team. So they're kind of in mediocrity, which
stuck in
sucks
purgatory.
Yeah, it sucks in sports. You can't really get drafted, but you can't really contend. And once you get Harden, you make the playoffs 8 straight years. And having Harden has allowed you to have other stars like Dwight Howard, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, things like that. So I get it. Harden has been the city, the fan base loves Harden. They love Harden. But the franchise doesn't owe him anything more than they've gave him. They've given him Supermax deals. Yeah. He's got endorsement deals, his own shoe, right? How many NBA players have their actual own shoe, On top of that, before Harden got here, he was a 6th man. He comes to Houston. He's now like a top 3 player. He's a superstar, So, in my opinion, the Rockets don't owe him anything more than what they've already given him and committed to him. They're paying a tax this year, which is a big deal. The Rockets never pay a luxury tax. They're, set to pay a luxury tax this year to convince Harden that this team is, we're convinced, we're willing to at least give it a shot and go all in, So I don't really think that the Rockets owe him anything. I read that he feels like regardless of what the Rockets could get back, they should just take it because of what he's done for the franchise. And that's just not how sports works or business. It's not how it works.
Doesn't make sense at all. That's Bill O'Brien business right there.
Yeah.
So now I want to ask, James Harden's kind of a polarizing figure, obviously. There's a lot of people on the side of the coin that he's not one of the all-time greats, and there's some that think he is an all-time great. What's your opinion on it?
So I think that Harden is definitely one of the all-time greatest scorers. I know that his style a lot of people don't like because a lot of it's based off of, it seems like, shooting threes and getting to the free throw line. The free throw line is something that I know fans don't like, right? Especially seeing him flail in the air or whatever. But he has a textbook understanding of the rule book, which, it's simple as if you don't want him shooting free throws, then don't foul him, Yeah. But yeah, in my opinion, he is one of the greatest scorers, definitely the greatest isolation player we've ever seen. Now, unfortunately, we're in an era where it's rings or nothing. Right? You don't have a ring, then it's like you can't be considered one of the all-time greatest. But I do think that when it's all said and done, he will be viewed as that. I think right now, like I said, I think we could say that he's the greatest scorer that's ever played. We're definitely gonna have the conversation that he is in the discussion for one of the greatest scorers ever. He's also improved a lot on the defensive end of the last couple of years, which I think that the lack of just effort on that side,
exactly.
The lack of effort on that side initially really kind of dinged him. But lately, he's tried to clamp down. He's been a much better defender of late.
I don't think it has anything to do with his lack of ability to defend. It's he doesn't care to defend. And honestly, I think that's worse. But when you're a 3-time, I think he's a 3-time league leading scorer now, scoring champion now, 7-time all NBA. I agree. He's just deadly in isolation. I think he's one of the greatest scorers. So I actually agree with that opinion.
And I won't knock his defense because I don't play defense when I play. And I have a defensive philosophy. So some people have called me a red carpet defender, but my philosophy is this. If you outscore the guy that you're guarding, you played good defense.
It's actually kind of hard to argue with that.
Because if everybody does that, you go undefeated, right?
Yeah.
Okay. By that logic, he's a great defender.
Yeah, exactly. He usually always outscores his matchup. Yeah.
Talk about trades. You brought it up. Like the Sixers, they're going to look for Ben Simmons in a Sixers deal. But again, Ben Simmons is John Wall but taller. He can't shoot and he slashes to the basket. And then you look at the Brooklyn Nets. If they send back Kyrie, well, now you've got Kyrie and Wall taking turns dribbling at the top of the key. So I started thinking, what is it that Houston would want in return that actually makes sense? And it's going to be a wing scorer or a power forward. And I think that the team that they're trading him to can't have a point guard there. You couldn't trade him to Toronto for Siakam, even though that makes sense for Houston. It doesn't make sense for Toronto because you still have Lowry there. So I thought the team –
Fred VanVleet, but yeah.
Yeah, so the team that made the most sense to me, and now it's kind of shot because of the new contract, but I thought a trade for Paul George made a lot of sense because Harden and Kyrie are the perfect symbiotic relationship where, Kyrie can be the beneficiary of those passes.
Kawhi,
Kyrie, for those passes. And then, Paul George going to play the wing with, John Wall. And it was just the perfect match. But now I see, Clippers gave that huge deal to Paul George. It's not going to happen. But that's the kind of deal I think they should be looking at is bringing back a wing player.
Yeah, so initially there was a lot of talks about Paul George and the Rockets, whether it was for Harden. No, actually was initially talks about Paul George for Russ before Russ got dealt to the Wizards. But the Rockets are looking for a young franchise cornerstone, a star player, and some draft capital to try to recoup some of that lost picks from Daryl Morey's, wheeling and dealing, right? So if they're looking for a young franchise cornerstone, I mean, it would seem like that almost has to be Simmons. Now, obviously, Simmons, and Wall, as you mentioned, they're both essentially point guards. Although I think that Simmons could play the point forward role, 6'9", 6'10". That pairing would have to depend on Wall being able to shoot. Now, he's had a couple of seasons where he's been 35% from three. He did have 1 year where he shot 37% from three. Obviously, John Wall's not a three-point shooter, but I think that part of the thinking there is that if you do have Simmons and Wall, and all else that you have, those are both great defenders. I mean, Ben Simmons was first team all defense last season, and you could have either one of them stagger. In past years, the Rockets staggered either Russ or Harden to where that one of them ran the second unit. So you always, at all times, you had a stellar guard, floor general, on the court. So by that logic, at least, if you do have a Wall and Simmons, same thing. You can stagger their minutes to where the second unit, you always have, one of them on the floor. And, although I do think that they have similar styles of play when it comes to, obviously, you basically have 2 point guards. I do think that Simmons and Wall, if anyone can make that work, it would be Silas because he's been an offensive innovator. We've seen what he's been able to do. But, I mean, the biggest challenge is that, Harden's salary, $41 million, you're going to have to obviously bring that back. And you don't want to just make a deal just to get rid of him, right? So, I mean, the Rockets have had their asking price is that they want a star and draft picks. The draft pick part is important in the Philly deal because, again, Daryl Morey doesn't care about draft picks. So it would seem like that would get you what you're looking for if you want a star and draft picks.
And then the last thing I had on the East Coast, again, trading him to the East Coast, getting him out of the West, right, is and especially if Houston's going to start taking on these big risk injury potential cases, I think it makes sense to send them to Chicago for Zach LaVine and Wendell Carter and maybe some draft picks.
Chicago, I actually like that. I like that deal. That's been discussed by fans at least. LaVine, I'm a big fan of Zach LaVine. I think LaVine can play. He could play alongside Wall as well. Carter, young up and coming prospect, good draft picks that you could get, from the Bulls, especially if they're not going to be any good for a while. So I would think that would be a fairly decent, trade offer, trade package. We haven't heard them discuss much, which makes me wonder maybe the Rockets aren't big on LaVine. But I personally think that would be a really good package.
And, of course, like I said, you had written for the Toro Times, you're a big Texans guy still. You mentioned it yourself.
Yeah.
So we definitely wanted to, ask you a little bit about the Houston Texans. And I'd come up with this graphic here. If you're listening and not watching it, then you're going to be missing out here. But I came out with a graphic. Notable trades from Bill O'Brien. Obviously, Jadeveon Clowney for Barkevious Mingo, Jacob Martin, and a third-round pick, which they later traded to the Raiders. They traded – 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick and Jason Batamosi for Laramie Tunsil. And then DeAndre Hopkins, and they didn't even get back a first for DeAndre Hopkins. They got back David Johnson in a second and a fourth, which they swapped fourths. And I guess my question for you, now you're a Houston Texans fan, watching this stuff go down, like I'm a Patriots fan, right? So anytime Bill Belichick does something and it looks stupid, I'm like, well, we say, Bill, we trust. He knows what he's doing. Did you ever think, in Bill O'Brien we trust? Or was it like, nope, no, this just doesn't work?
First off, why do you guys have to do this, man? Why do you have to show this graphic, man? That's painful to see. That's painful to see, man. No, so never had confidence in Bill O'Brien, especially as a general manager. Now, some people think that he was a decent head coach because he won several division titles. AFC South during those years wasn't really all that great, so I don't really give you a crown for winning a division. But no, never had confidence in Bill O'Brien. And really, there were a lot of other moves that were made on his watch. The Dwayne Brown trade. Now, that was made by Rick Smith, the former GM. But I would love to have held on to him. We also heard about how Bill O'Brien basically pushed Andre Johnson out, which you just don't do that. He goes to the Colts and then he's bouncing around. The guy's a franchise great. You just don't do that. But the DeAndre Hopkins trade was stupid beyond comprehension. I mean, the Cardinals were going to cut David Johnson. He was not going to be the starter. They're going to start Kenyon Drake. So you're trading arguably the best receiver for a guy that's probably going to get cut anyways, and you don't even get a first-round pick out of that. It's like, what are you thinking? Now, I get it. If Hopkins told him, hey, I want a new contract, and he had 2 years left in this deal, and Bill O'Brien, his explanation after the trade went down was that we don't want to give, a new contract to a player who's got 2 years left, whatever the case. But you do it, or if you're not willing to do it now, then the conversation with Hopkins is, hey, right this minute, we're certainly not opposed to it, but right now, this, as of today, we don't think this is the best, that's basically you start having a discussion, negotiate with him, let him know you're willing to do this, whether you don't want to do it right now or not. But the message that he gave to Hopkins was, we're not open to that at all. And then Hopkins, okay, well, get me out of town. And even then, you don't have to do it. You don't have to trade him just because he says, get me out of town. It's the same thing with Harden. He's under contract 2 more years. So to do that trade, and then what you got back, I mean,
you don't have to get peanuts for him either. You could get more than a bag of Skittles and some potato chips for the guy.
Right.
He was the best receiver in the league at the time, and you got nothing back. It was so frustrating.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't even think that they canvassed the league for, what
they took the first deal that came out, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's just stupid. It's stupid.
Well,
go ahead, Lane. No, go ahead.
That's why when they made the trade initially, and obviously, Arizona had the 4th or 5th overall pick, which they used on Isaiah Simmons, 8th pick maybe. But,
8th.
I think they were like, you know what, we are not trading the 8th pick for DeAndre Hopkins. We really want him, but we're not giving up that 8th pick. And I feel like Houston just said, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand they're not wanting to trade the 8th, but if you're Houston, then you try you try a swap of some kind to get, picks back. Now, I understand they moved a lot of draft capital for Laramie Tunsil, which honestly I don't think was a terrible move. Laramie Tunsil's played well. He's a franchise cornerstone left tackle. Maybe the 2 first and a second was a lot, but when you get a guy that can actually play left tackle and Deshaun Watson can count on, that's huge. Now, I agree it stems back from the Dwayne Brown trade, which they probably should have never made because he was a franchise left tackle at the time.
Yeah.
But, I think it's just a systematic, issue where the moves from the top were controlled obviously by the same guy, and you got nobody in his ear saying, hey, look, this isn't a good idea. Where do you think the franchise goes from here? Do you have any, I know you don't write for the Texans anymore, but any word coming out of the city of where they're going, GM, coach, things like that?
Well, the Texans have been pretty tight-lipped about if they are interested or locked in on a specific candidate. So far, we've heard that they have hired a searching firm to help them with that. Personally, my opinion is a couple names that I would like at least is, general manager. I like John Dorsey. John Dorsey left his footprint on Browns, who are doing great this season, a Chiefs team. He built that team up, and he's out of work right now. So I love the pairing of Dorsey and Bieniemy for the head coach from the Chiefs. I also would like Ozzie Newsome as a GM. I know he's retired right now, but
everyone would like Ozzie Newsome as a GM.
Yeah, so those are some names just off the top for GMs. When it comes to head coach, the thing is that this Texans team, you have, it's hard to get a young cornerstone quarterback, right? Deshaun Watson's definitely that. Even with the surrounding supporting cast, it hasn't necessarily been great this year. A lot of guys in and out, the lineup, injuries, whatever have you.
Steroids.
Yeah, steroids also. Steroids as well. Deshaun Watson played great, so because of that, I think you can get yourself a good coach. Like I said, I like the idea of Bieniemy. He's definitely a player's coach, former player himself. And I like, there's been questions about, what was he really running the Chiefs offense or was it Andy Reid, right? I think that regardless of whether he was, making those play calls or not, he definitely had some responsibility there, So to me, whether it's Bieniemy, I like Robert Saleh from the 49ers, the defense coordinator. I think he would be a good head coaching option. People are talking about Joe Brady from the Panthers, the OC. I know he, first year as an OC, did a really good job at LSU. I think personally, I would rather Bieniemy if we're going to go offense over Brady, but Brady wouldn't be bad. What I do not want to see happen is them continue to try to pluck from the Patriots, right? Josh McDaniels, I don't think that would be a good idea to be the head coach. I know the Texans tried getting Nick Caserio to be the GM last year from Patriots. I don't think that'd be a good idea. I think I'm all Patriots out right now when it comes to their personnel members, right? Because you don't have Bill Belichick. That's a big difference,
Yeah. I actually think your combo of John Dorsey and Eric Bieniemy is perfect. I think Houston is arguably the most desirable, landing spot because you do have Deshaun Watson. You have a top 5 cornerstone at quarterback, and you're set there for years to come. I feel like a coach, especially like Bieniemy, feels like he could scheme, talent open, especially the talent they have on Houston, because they're not talent devoid. It's just not producing at this time. So I personally think they're the most desirable spot, and I think Eric Bieniemy is the logical and sensible choice there as well.
Yeah, now you do need a GM who's going to be able to finagle, because this year you don't. I mean,
it's going to be rough for a GM. GM spot's going to be rough because you got no picks, no cap space. I understand that, but as a coach, I think it's a very desirable situation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, agree.
All right, that's all I had for questions. Unless you got anything else with Rockets or Texans?
That was it for me, man. That was such a good interview, dude. I love picking your brain, man. You're a fun talk.
I enjoyed it, man. Thank you guys for having me on. We got to do this again sometime.
Oh, don't tempt me with a good time. When the season starts and stuff like that, we'll get you on for sure. I mean, especially, obviously, if something happens with Harden, we'll get you right on, man. That would be huge.
Let's do it for sure. I appreciate you guys having me on.
No, definitely. You
super stoked to have you on. Yeah, you're fantastic. So we've been really lucky with our guests. I think you're probably the best guest we've had. We had Charlie Ward on. I'd actually rather have you on here than Charlie Ward. So.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you very much, man.
Thanks so much.
Yep.
Thank you guys as well. Appreciate it.
Take care.
All right, that interview was brought to you by Invader Coffee. Again, this is 100% organic, 100% air roasted, 100% money back guarantee. Hopefully you enjoyed it. It was really, really fun to have somebody come on and talk about the Houston sports franchises. And I know that Sully was excited. I kind of wanted to see maybe get some Astros talk in there because of how much of a fan you are of them. But that was really great.
No, it was. I mean, he's incredibly knowledgeable. I loved his energy. You can tell he's got a passion for, sports writing, and he's like us, and that's a story we love. A fan that, essentially realized his dream and now is a sports writer. I think that's obviously where we'd both like to be in the future. So, it's cool to see a guy who's got that passion and has made it happen.
Well, it is time for your top prospects. Obviously, we have some quarterbacks this week, so I'm really excited about that. And we're kicking things off, obviously, with Zach Wilson from BYU. So I guess tell us a little bit about Zach.
Now, Zach kind of, really kind of not exploded onto the scene, but, I mean, he's risen. And, if you're a fan of the show, I'm not big on Trey Lance. So Zach Wilson has moved ahead of Trey Lance. I think this is kind of, a fair enough ranking. This is obviously not where either one will go. I think both will end up being top 10 to 15 picks, but I mean, Zach Wilson has just played extremely well over the year. Even in the loss against Coastal Carolina, he still played extremely well. He still graded out at around 90. his just arm talent is special. He's functionally athletic. It's not like you're just going to get a guy who can move but doesn't know how to move. He's got incredible arm talent. He can change his levels where he throws the ball, velocities. He can hit pretty much every throw. He's got less arm talent than Trey Lance overall, but he's much more accurate. And I think he makes better decisions. He's just more of a quarterback at this point, not just an athlete playing the position. I think Zach Wilson's got a potential to go extremely, extremely high in the draft.
Okay. I know there's been a lot of talk about it, kind of more so generated this season with some of the guys not playing. And I'm going to get to it when we get to some of our quarterbacks later, because some comparisons with Zach Wilson, because I don't feel like he had a tremendous year last year. He's having a good year this year. So I'm just curious why he's moving up so quickly.
It wasn't by any means, it wasn't a bad year at all last year. I think we went into the year knowing that there were some top level quarterbacks in Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and then Trey Lance was on that fence. I never felt that way about Trey Lance because I don't like an athlete playing quarterback. If you know anything about me and Lamar Jackson, I don't like an athlete playing quarterback. I would prefer a quarterback who then is an athlete. But so I'm not as big as on Trey Lance, but then it was a pretty big, not a drop off, but you had guys like Brock Purdy, who had potential, Jamie Newman, who I was incredibly high on, but took the year off. So it's going to hurt him tremendously. Kyle Trask, Mac Jones, all those guys in the second that now some have played their way up, and Zach Wilson was one of them. He's just playing, exceptional football. He doesn't turn the ball over. He makes good decisions. And again, he's functionally athletic. He's extremely accurate on rollouts, which when you can move and you can vary a pocket and then be deadly, I think that's incredibly important, especially in today's NFL.
Okay. And from quarterbacks to the people that protect them, Alex Leatherwood, I feel like probably 2/3 of our top prospects have all been Alabama guys.
Is that a shock? They're pretty stacked, especially that offense this year. It's crazy. They've got 3 wide receivers that may go in the first round. And then Leatherwood's a kid who, he's been extremely versatile. He started out at playing guard as a true sophomore, and then honestly didn't perform extremely well, but has matured very well and now has been their left tackle the past 2 years. And he's just got a quality about him that you can't teach. Again, a balance. The guy's never out of control. He's never lunging. He's never reaching. He's always in a good base position, which you cannot teach. You just can't teach that. And that's extremely important. He's a little rough. I'm not going to lie. He's a little rough in pass coverage. He takes bad angles. He doesn't, I think, essentially realize he doesn't have the best, I think, pocket awareness yet. But that can be taught, or can be taught. That's something that is a tangible skill that you can teach. He's got the ideal bend, the ideal height, the ideal length. He's just kind of a prototype at 6'6", 310. And he does a lot of things well. He's going to need coaching, but there's an old saying, God doesn't make people this big that move like this. He just doesn't. And when he does make them, you take them. So
in your opinion, is he a blindside tackle or is he a strong side tackle?
Honestly, you're going to make him a left tackle. You're going to make him a blindside tackle because he has all those tangible abilities and that athletic ability. If I was somebody like Houston, let's say, just because they have a true left tackle in Laramie Tunsil, but they maybe could use another tackle or something like that, man, I'd be all over the guy at right tackle because I think he has the ability to be a truly top 5 right tackle. But again, a left tackle is just more important. So even if you get a top 10 left tackle, I think that's more important than a top 5 right tackle. So.
Wide receiver, we talked about a few of these guys. Most of the guys we've talked about, I feel like, have been undersized. So finally, we got somebody with some height on him.
Yeah, Rashad Bateman's a bigger guy. 6'2", 210. I wish he would have played more this year. He decided he was going to play a little and then opted out, and unfortunately, we just didn't see enough out of him. The issue being is, Minnesota had Tyler Johnson, who they played in the slot and they fed him in the slot, and he got a ton of targets. Rashad Bateman was a player who, won on the outside, which is important, and it's good to know in the NFL. His releases are extremely good. He's going to get off press coverage. He's going to be, off man coverage. He knows how to, use his route running and his head fakes to get open. The issue being, again, is he's not a good athlete. He may run a 4.5, kind of thing like that. And you'd like to see just like a little more, like I would have loved to see another year of production from him, to really have him in that elite class. But right now he's going to hold steady. He may move. Honestly, this is a kid who may move in my lists because I just haven't seen him. So other guys that I've seen that have performed well are going to move up this list.
I'm curious when it comes to wide receiver, because we saw, obviously, we've mentioned it. N'Keal Harry, huge fan, 6'4", he's got the size. He has pretty good hands. He can jump through the roof, right? But he doesn't create a lot of separation. So you talk about guys with like that 4.5. Jerry Rice ran a 4.55. Obviously Jerry Rice, greatest wide receiver of all time. You could say, I'm sure much better route runner than a lot of these guys. Just found a way to get open. But I mean, that's what I'm saying is when you find these guys who are athletes like a N'Keal Harry or like Rashad Bateman, they have more athleticism than Jerry Rice had coming into the league. Can you teach them the route running like Jerry Rice had?
You would think, and it's something that obviously coaches, I would assume pride themselves on. Rashad Bateman is not the athlete N'Keal Harry was, first and foremost. He's not that player. But I think Rashad Bateman's a better route runner. I think you're essentially kind of confusing the two. I think Rashad Bateman is more of the route runner, not the pure athlete. I think he can create separation at the next level, whereas N'Keal Harry relies on, winning at the catch point and just being more physical. But teaching a route running skill is something that's very difficult. I mean, Justin Jefferson, and Jerry Jeudy are coming onto the scene and showing us that, like, look, rookies can excel and beat NFL coverage and be good route runners. So it's very possible. Justin Jefferson has an insane ability to eat up off coverage and then use his head fakes and feints to essentially leave guys lost. Jerry Jeudy's the same thing. Neither of these guys are Rashad Bateman is neither of them by any means, but he is more of an elite route runner than N'Keal Harry was.
I'll tell you who I would hire as a wide receivers coach to teach route running when he retires is Julian Edelman, because every time I watch a Patriots game when he would play, I'm like, they're throwing it to him. How is he wide open every time?
I mean, that's to be fair, a lot of that was schemed, but he also is another guy who understood zone coverage, understood where coverage was going to be, and understood finding pockets in space. And that's a skill that's very hard to teach, though. It's very like awareness driven and tape driven and things like that.
I guess it helps that he was a quarterback in college. So
yes, very much so. Yeah.
Trey Lance, a guy, I know you just compared him to Lamar Jackson, the athlete playing quarterback, but he is still a top prospect because we know teams are going to take him very high.
They are, which I think will be a tremendous mistake. I mean, look at the kid. He's 6'4", he's 230. You're going to see here he's probably going to run the ball. Yep, shocker. And, I mean, look, he's a great running back. I'm not denying that. I think he can be an exceptional talent with the ball in his hand, but I just don't think he's a good quarterback. Right there's a really good example of the kid has special arm talent. I mean, special arm talent. And he's a special athlete. And so it's going to get him drafted. Guys that are 6'4", 230 don't move like that. He's a physical runner. He is not Lamar. He's not going to shake you. He will put his head down and run you smack over, which obviously, yes, very much so. But in the NFL, you can see that only works for so long. So you have to learn how to throw the football, man. You just have to. And I mean, he's just bad at it. Plain and simple, he's just bad at it. He doesn't throw with anticipation. Guys have to be wide open for him to make the throw. His accuracy is, I mean, average at best. It's going to be a project and a huge one. Now you're going to have an offensive coordinator that's going to be able to scheme to his, strengths. But obviously somebody's going to take him very high because his ceiling is the moon. If you can teach this kid how to play quarterback and to throw accurately, I mean, now granted, those are big ifs. Like, don't get me wrong, that doesn't happen overnight. But I mean, if you can teach him how to play quarterback, holy shit.
Yeah. And I guess I love potential when it comes to the NBA draft, a guy with a high ceiling, but he's very rough. I don't love it, especially with quarterbacks in the NFL draft. And so we talked last year, a guy that you really liked was Jordan Love, right? You said extremely special arm talent, very good athlete, but he also set the record for interceptions in the season for college. I mean, decision making to me is so much more important than athleticism and arm talent.
Agreed. And to be fair, and I don't believe this is a strength, but one of the strengths that are mostly listed on scouting reports for him are he is a good decision maker. I mean, he did have the season last year where I think he threw 0 interceptions, and I think he's only had, I think, 4 turnovers his entire college career or things like that. And for a guy who runs the ball 20 times a game, fumbles are, maybe an issue, but he doesn't fumble the ball either. Now, why he doesn't turn the ball over is because he's one read and gone. So, it's tough to make a bad decision at that point where it's, he's not open. Well, let me just run around a guy in Division II football that I am a superior athlete to. It's not going to happen in the NFL. It's just not. So I think that's where he's going to obviously struggle. And I mean, if you plan on starting now, you mentioned Jordan Love, and I mean, could he have gone to a better situation? He goes to Green Bay where he won't start for probably 2 years. He's going to learn how to play quarterback under arguably one of the best quarterbacks of all time. And eventually he's probably going to succeed, honestly. I think Jordan Love has a better chance to succeed than a lot of these other rookie quarterbacks, especially long term. Now, if Trey Lance goes to a similar situation, I think he has a great chance to work out. If somebody tries to force him to be a starter year one, I think he's going to fail miserably, honestly.
And I guess according to how we've broken this guy down, because we've talked about him a lot already this season, but a guy who is the anti-Trey Lance in terms of no athleticism, great decision-making, accurate short passes, right? Multiple reads and before leaving, if he leaves at all. So I guess tell us a little bit about Kyle Trask, because like you said, this guy's been climbing up the boards this season, but prior to this season, we were talking about, second, third round.
Yeah, he wasn't a top 50 player for me to start the season. He was right on the fringe, to be fair, but he just wasn't there. But I mean, the guy's just played out of his mind this season. He understands this offense so well. He understands where his players are going to be. His pocket awareness has grown exceptional. The big thing, his biggest knock was that he was a statue and he didn't process things well. And I think he's completely shattered that opinion. I think he will step up. He'll maneuver in the pocket. I think his processing speed and ability to go from second, third, fourth reads is elite at this point. I really like Kyle Trask a lot. If I'm an NFL GM, I take Kyle Trask over Trey Lance 10 times out of 10. I mean, he's 6'5", he's 240. He is the prototype of what you want a pocket passing quarterback to be. He's got the arm talent. He can make any throw on the field, and he's exceptionally accurate as well. I really think teams are going to struggle to find things they don't like about Kyle Trask.
Well, and that's where I mentioned it earlier when we talked about Zach Wilson. I wanted to bring it back around the Zach Wilson versus Kyle Trask because obviously Trask is bigger. Like you said, he's more prototypical as a passer. Looking at their seasons last year, like I said, Zach Wilson had an okay season. It wasn't bad. It wasn't amazing. But Kyle Trask had a better season than Zach Wilson last year, and he played in the SEC. So why is Zach Wilson, even today, still rated ahead of him?
To be fair, a lot of what Kyle Trask did last year was just schemed production. It was college production, which looks good on paper, but it's not. It doesn't translate I don't know how to announce it. Doesn't translate athletically or prospect-wise to the NFL. Graham Harrell put up 5,000 yards at Texas Tech. He wasn't a good quarterback prospect.
Well, Texas Tech's not Florida, though.
No, I agree. But again, it's still schemed production, in my opinion, last year. Last year, he looked like a statue. If his first or second read wasn't there, Kyle Trask was a little lost, and he made some bad decisions and some bad throws. That's completely changed over this season. He really is a great decision maker. Like I said, he understands this offense like the back of his hand, and he knows where his guys are going to be, and he trusts that. Zach Wilson, my apologies, is arguably just as good of arm talent, just as accurate, more athletic and makes anticipatory throws. He can make NFL throws. He can make throws before players are out of their break. He's not, like I said, I use this example a lot. He's an athlete. He's not an athlete playing quarterback. He's a quarterback who happens to be an athlete. And those guys are going to get drafted over guys like Kyle Trask, plain and simple. Trevor Lawrence is a fairy tale because the kid is the prototypical pocket passer, and he's also mobile and super athletic. So I mean, Justin Fields the same way. That's why these guys are generational prospects. If Zach Wilson was 6'5", 230 and could still move and throw the ball the way he does, he'd be the number 3 overall pick. I mean, he still may be, but he would be considered a generational talent as well. He's a good quarterback. He's a good quarterback, not just an athlete.
And I know that you talked about the NFL and how they perceive pocket passers as being a negative because they want guys who are mobile like the Mahomes and Watson and Burrow and Herbert, right? It does seem to be a trend, but that said, you're a GM, you're a head coach, right? You've seen Tom Brady had 20-plus years of high-level football. Would you rather have a guy who stands in the pocket?
I would personally rather a Kyle Trask than a Zach Wilson or a Trey Lance, but that's me personally. I've also seen him now manipulate the pocket, and that's important. Tom Brady nobody would ever call him mobile or athletic. The guy could manipulate a pocket better than anybody we've ever seen, arguably. He knew where pressure was coming from, which is huge, and he was able to move himself away from it. I think Kyle Trask has that ability. That was his biggest knock coming into the season, but I think he's completely shut that down. I mean, ideally, like in a perfect world, you want a guy like Mahomes or a guy like, Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence, for that matter, who is very comfortable sitting in a pocket, can manipulate a pocket, can make any throw from a pocket, but in the off chance he gets a blitz he doesn't see, he can also get out and create a play on his own and things like that. Those guys are special and don't grow on trees, though.
Yeah, well, that's what I say. I mean, when I think of what you're describing, Russell Wilson comes to mind.
Yes.
And, Aaron Rodgers, obviously.
Of course.
Yeah. But like you said, they don't grow on trees. You don't see a lot of those guys. You see a lot of these guys who are highly athletic. They run the ball 15 to 20 times a game in college, right? And then they get to the NFL, and you're trying to teach them, hey, you only have to do that 3 times. Like,
it may be. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that I'd rather have almost like you said, like a Trask who can, again, you don't want to scheme any running plays for him. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, if he has to, go 5-6 yards down the field because of the pocket collapse, he can do it.
Exactly. Or if you just need him to move left, for that matter, and not take off. Because I think a lot of these young guys, too, especially these athletic guys, their first instinct when a pocket collapses is move and run. Well, I mean, as you can see in the NFL, a lot of these big plays are created when quarterbacks get out of the pocket and then are still looking downfield and are able to throw the ball downfield accurately. And, that's, I think, where the NFL is trending. So.
And that was the last of our prospects. Any final thoughts on the show? I'm very happy with our interview. I think it went phenomenally. And obviously the top prospects was fun because I did really want to ask about Kyle Trask versus Wilson. I personally like Trask, but I don't know anything about anything. So,
yeah, I mean, right now, the way they're ranked, because I had Trask so far back that it was, it's tough to just jump them 30 spots at this point, which honestly I did. But I mean, I rank more in tiers, which if the show or you follow the show, that's how I rank in general. So the actual numbers don't mean much. If a guy is ranked 18th or 21st, they're probably in the same tier. So I take them all at the same point. It's just a matter of who you like more. Yeah, I mean, we're both a little, I think, old school though in our sense. But yeah, I would much rather take the ready to go passer. Like, I mean, I think Kyle Trask, granted, you don't want any rookie quarterback to start from day one. You just don't. But I think Kyle Trask has the ability to succeed from day one far more than these other 2 guys.
And I've also put a lot of it on the offensive coordinator because, like I was saying, I don't want an offensive coordinator to scheme any run plays for my quarterback.
Never.
The only time he runs is when he gets pushed out. I do not want you to just no run play option. And that's one of the things I'll give tons of credit to Bieniemy and Andy Reid is that Patrick Mahomes is really athletic and mobile, but I feel like they don't scheme a lot of run plays, probably because of the knee injury last year too, but they don't want to scheme any run plays for him. It's like if he has to run out of the pocket, he has to, but we're not writing it up in the playbook that way.
And the crazy thing is, too, is they even do this wildcat formation where he's not even the quarterback. He goes in motion like he's going to get the ball and fake run and all this shit. They still do read options, and people still fall for it every time, knowing, like, Patrick Mahomes is not going to run the football. Like, he's not. He's not going to do it. But it works, man. They're geniuses over there. They really are special.
And that is the show. I'm actually going to give it to you if you want to throw it to Kenny.
Oh, it's on me. All right. Hey, yo, Kenny, what's poppin', man? How you living, dog?
It's